This is Lady Boule, and I hope you're having a marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Well, someone asked me to speak on the Supreme Court ruling today, where they practically gutted affirmative action, and they're telling colleges, these elite colleges that the Asians are so obsessed with, that they cannot consider race when they're deciding whether or not to accept an applicant to college. So that 7 or 8% of black people that are going to college, Asians have just been obsessing over that, and that's the reason why they're not getting in college, because of those few black students. Many black people feel like I do, that this is probably for the best, because now black students realize if they want to get into an elite college, which is really not going to benefit the average black person, if you want to get into that elite college, you really do need to make whatever the score is, whatever the ACT or SAT score is that they say you should make that score. Poverty does not stop anybody from being smart. If you're smart, you're smart. And the Asians are saying that they work hard. That's all they have to argue with. And I believe that the Asians are going to end up being disappointed in the end, because they think they're going to legislate. I think they're going to run to the Supreme Court every time they can't get into school and have an excuse as to why they don't get into school, because all they have going for themselves is test scores. Now, we already know that these colleges, many of the colleges and a lot of these elite colleges, have decided that they're not going to even consider test scores. So that's all the Asians have going for themselves. And some of these black students are making the grades, but the Asians apparently are going through everybody's grade to see what everybody made, so they can say that, oh, we have to make 200 points more than you do. So America set it up this way when they started this whole thing about the test scores. Now, when the Supreme Court rules that you can't consider race, that's fine. But the thing about it is that when they take the test scores out of the mix, then what is left? Now what? Now what are they going to use? The universities have to come up with another way of determining whether or not a student is eligible, whether or not they will accept a student into their school, not counting race. Well, I think black students are going to win that one, because black students actually have more going for them than race. That's a mistake. They're overplaying their hand. And I don't think that the Asians really understand how white supremacy actually works. Now, they have pushed those Asians up to do this. And I think, and we know that white people don't ever do anything without having a sleight of hand. They already have another plan in the background. So when you think that you won something, you're not going to win anything that they don't want you to win. So they're letting the Asians have this. They're just really ecstatic now, the Asians are, that the Supreme Court has ruled that they can't consider race. So that's going to solve all of their problems, they think. But what's going to happen when the colleges say, okay, we don't consider race, but now we're going to look at how well-rounded you are, because that's really what they should have been looking at in the first place. All those test scores was keeping black people out. So every black person who wants to mourn the end of affirmative action, please feel free to do so, but I won't be in that number. Furthermore, black people have been saying that affirmative action benefited white women more than it did black people. So the question would be, what are white women going to do? If they benefited more from affirmative action than black people, then what are white women going to do? I believe that this is a win-win for black people. We don't see it that way because we think, oh, they're discriminated against us again, because that's what they've always done. After our ancestors had spent 246 years in slavery, slavery ended, and they instituted something called Reconstruction. The Reconstruction era was when black people were really getting on their feet, and black people were already going to college. Black people have been going to college since before slavery ended. So this whole idea about black people going to college is not new. But anyway, when the Civil War ended and Reconstruction began, that's when Madam C.J. Walker, that was when Madame C.J. Walker and Charles Patton and these black people who had come out of slavery established million-dollar businesses and multi-million-dollar businesses. But then Reconstruction lasted for 12 years. And then they had the election of 1876. There was a tie in the Electoral College. The Democrats had 269 electoral votes, and the Republicans had 269 electoral votes. So they had to decide which one of the candidates was going to be the president of the United States, the Democrat or the Republican. So the Democrats and Republicans made a deal. The Democrats were the Confederates. They had lost the Civil War and their slaves, air quotes. The Democrats wanted two things, and they were very important. During Reconstruction, the federal government had sent federal troops into the South to protect the black people from terrorist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. So the Democrats wanted two things. They wanted the Republicans to remove the federal troops out of the South. And the second thing they wanted was to have control over black people again so they could reinstate slavery. So the Republicans said if they could be the president, because they wanted the power of the president. So they said, let us be the president and we'll pull the troops out and the black people will go back into slavery and it's open season on black people. And Reconstruction, by many historians' records, was more brutal and violent to the formerly enslaved people than slavery had been. And that is saying quite a bit. And slavery went on for almost another 100 years. The United States has never lived up to anything they said they were going to do for black people. 40 acres and a mule fell through. So anything they have promised black people, somehow they get challenged. Now they're being challenged by Asians, people who weren't even here when this country was built, and nobody should even be paying any attention to them. But this is what America is willing to do for black people. But right is going to win. I know this is hard to take sometimes, and it's hard to believe. But right is going to win, and they have not done right by black people. And for the black people who are really upset about this, I do sympathize with you, but I really think it's for the best. We don't need another race of people, the Asians, who have contributed nothing to this country. And white people will never say that because they're the ones pushing the Asians up to do this in the first place. The Asians really think that they're going to have the country over a barrel with these test scores. But you and I know white people better than that. We know that if Asians are 14% of the population at Harvard, Asians going to be 14% of the population in Harvard 10 years from now. Because they're not going to create a situation where Asians are going to be in the majority at Harvard. And we talked about this the other day. Asians are going to these schools, but Asians are not really accomplishing that much. Somebody said in my comment section, well, most of the doctors are Asian. Well, maybe most of the doctors where you are Asian, but they're not the majority where everybody lives. And black people who want to be doctors don't need to go to Harvard. There are 4 or 5 black schools, not to count the PWIs that black people get into. Asians and Hispanics and Indians and white people are going to these HBCUs. Black people are not even going to the HBCUs. So, that's the best route for a black person, and we're not even going there in large numbers. So I believe that the affirmative action case, I believe that it was done because people think, well, black people are getting a free ride and they're hurting Asians. Black people are not hurting Asians, and the Supreme Court has already told them that. So I think what they're doing is pulling all of the, let's blame it on black people. I think they're pulling that out of the equation, which is what we need to be, out of the equation, and let Asians and white people go head to head. And so let's look at the next thing that the Asians are not even thinking about. And this is the real challenge to Asians getting into these elite schools. And that's these legacies. 33% of the students enrolled at Harvard are legacies. And that's the same with all of these elite schools that Asians are trying to get into. Another 30 or maybe even 40% of the white kids at Harvard are regular white kids whose parents have money. They donated a lot of money. They paid for a building, or they're just white kids that are gifted themselves. Asians are not the only people that can pass tests, but it is a test for black people. We don't need to be relying on the government of the United States because they've never been reliable enough for us. So I can't mourn this decision. I really can't, because black people have too many more options, and we fully know when you learn how to play the game, they change the rules. Now Asians don't know that, but we know that. When you learn how to play the game that white people play, they change the rules. Now they're changing the rules on the Asians that just don't realize it. When they say that we're not going to consider test scores, that knocks the Asians out of the water. And I think that's what they should do. And I think they did this intentionally, because this argument needs to be taken off the table that somehow black people are taking up their spaces. I want this argument taken off the table, and I want black people, I want black students to compete head to head on with them. But what I really think is going to happen is that the test scores are going to become irrelevant. We don't care what you made on the test. Let's see how you did in high school, or let's look at some other things, and let's see how they fare. So let's table this for now, and see where we are 5 years from now, because we know the system, and we know the system is rigged, and it's not just rigged for black people; it's rigged for anybody that's not white. Now, to back up what I just said, more than 80% of the colleges in the United States will not require a standardized test score for admissions this fall, 2023. So they've already decided what they're going to do, and the Asians think they've won something, but they really haven't. That's all they have. All they have going for themselves are test scores. And if the colleges snatch that out from under them, they're not going to have anything to stand on. As I said before, they can't play football, they can't play basketball, they're not even good soccer or baseball players. They're not good musicians. They read music, but they don't have a natural gift for it, and they can't sing. I'm going back to say that. Somebody came on to say they can sing. Well, I don't think they can sing. I don't know anything they can sing, something they copied from black people. So my point is that we don't need to get upset about affirmative action. What we need to say is good. We think they did the right thing. That's what I think. I think they did the right thing, because that takes black people off the table and out of the discussion, and let Asians and white people go head to head. Because those white people, now y'all, you can take this to the bank. They are not going to admit any more Asians into those schools than they want to. And by them saying they're not going to require test scores anymore, see, the Supreme Court already knows that. They already know that. So they said, well, come up with another means of acquiring diversity in your schools. And it'll be easy to do because test scores are off the table. The Asians want race off the table. But what the colleges have done is taken test scores off the table. We really need to let that sink in. Because when they say they have taken it off the table, they have taken it off the table. That doesn't mean that they're not going to look at some type of academic performance. But what they're saying is Asians are not going to dictate to us who we can let into our schools. Now, that's what they're really saying. We just need to sit back and watch this play out. Now that we're off the table, they can't drag black people into it anymore. Watch and see what they try to do to get black people back in the argument, because they're not going to take over. Asians are not going to take on white people, because white people are not going to allow it. And this country was not built with Asians in mind, and those universities were not built with Asians in mind. And Asians are not going to dictate to them who they can let into those schools. The same amount of black people that are in those schools now are going to be in those schools next year, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. Supreme Court is sick and tired of people coming to them about affirmative action, because the way they're framing it, they're making it seem like these colleges are doing something that's unfair to other people, not taking into consideration the damage that was done to black people. But if we feel like we are superior, then we should behave that way. And I think we are. And just to end this discussion, that's just to end this video, I took the liberty of looking up the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that are black. I had said it was 4, but I think it's about 6 or 7. Not one of them went to Harvard or an elite school. Some of them went to HBCUs. I'm planning to do a video on that next. The CEOs and where they went to school. So I think we need to dismiss these Asians, let them have their party today, but tomorrow is a new day. And come this fall, they're going to find out that the schools that they want to get in are not even looking at their test scores. And I think that's the best lesson that they can learn. When you learn how to play the game, they change the rules. Okay, y'all. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think about this video. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.